What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. In today's episode, we will be focusing on the final 4 Sinnoh Stone required evolution Pokemon in Pokemon Go that simply have not been released yet. If we were to take a look at the track record, for example with Magnezone, it got released as a Community Day Pokemon as well as obtaining a Community Day exclusive move. I personally think that these Pokemon are kind of primed for that as well, so in the next couple of months we will probably be seeing them soon. But regardless of that, it's good to kind of get a pulse on them now, cover their statistics, cover what they could actually be good at, and I'm actually super excited to talk about this. But anyways, if you do enjoy it, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Probeoh Pass with a max AP of 2080. Probeoh Pass is a dual type of rock and steel. If we go ahead and take a look at the stats, you will see some stats that aren't necessarily the best. An extremely low attack stat, a fairly low stamina stat. Its defense stat is absolutely amazing, ranked out at 8th in Pokemon Go. But this is an option where I do think a lot of people would probably initially overlook at it based on the stats, based on the CP. But I want to go ahead and tell you why it could actually be a good option, especially in PvP. And it has to actually do with the typing of the Pokemon. If you go ahead and take a look at it, we actually only have 3 weaknesses. Now, yes, there are 2 double weaknesses with a fighting and ground type. At the same time, if you check out the resistances, there are a total of 9 resistances. That is absolutely amazing. And if you have been participating in the Silph Road tournaments, you know that they tend to narrow it down to just a handful of types. So if a Pokemon like Probeoh Pass qualifies for it based on the cup, it may not end up going up against any of its weaknesses, leaving nothing but the resistances. So definitely a positive from the PvP perspective, and something that I would personally look into. If you are curious about the movesets, we do have a fairly interesting one because we have Rock Throw, Spark, Magnet Bomb, Rock Slide, and Thunderbolt. The reason why this is so interesting is because you could go with a double rock, you could also add on another stab benefit with the Magnet Bomb, but then at the same time, if you want to go with something completely different, you actually have the capabilities of going with a double electric type moveset, which is at least interesting and worthy of a conversation. But personally, I think a lot of people are probably going to look over Probeoh Pass, but just keep it in mind, it's one of those that you probably want to hold on to, especially for PvP. Leafeon with a max CP of 2,944. Leafeon is a pure grass type Pokemon. If you take a look at the stats now, these stats are actually fairly good. Once again, a high defensive stat ranked out at 31st in Pokemon Go. Attack stat's actually not that bad. It does get outclassed by other grass type Pokemon. And then finally, the stamina stat unfortunately is its worst, but the overall ranking is 77th in Pokemon Go. If we were to go ahead and take a look at the typings, if you were considering using this Pokemon for PvP, you are going to run into some issues once again if you were looking at from an overall perspective. But yeah, go ahead and take a look at that. There's quite a bit of weaknesses, unfortunately. And then from the rating perspective, if you were interested in Leafeon, it's actually going to get outclassed by quite a bit, whether you're talking about just kind of like the Community Day starters or Pokemon like Roserade. Leafeon is going to fall a little bit behind that, but what I'm thinking is going to happen is Leafeon and Glaceon, which we will talk about next, are probably going to be released in yet again another Eevee Community Day. The only difference is they'll probably just have you use a Sinnoh Stone to evolve to it, and I personally think it will end up being random. You'll either get Leafeon or you'll get Glaceon if you use the Sinnoh Stone. That seems to be what Pokemon Go or Niantic will do, but definitely let me know what you think about it in the comments section. But other than that, if we want to go ahead and take a look at the moveset, you will see quite a good moveset. Razor Leaf is actually very good from the PvP standpoint, and then you also have access to Solar Beam, Leaf Blade. So as far as the charge moves are concerned, they are all grass types, so not necessarily the best option, but keep in mind, if it ends up becoming a Community Day Pokemon, I personally think it would make sense if it got access to Last Resort. So then you could go with a Quick Attack Last Resort, and you've got some normal type moves that could do some like neutral damage. So definitely keep that in mind. Up next is Glaceon with a max AP of 3,126. Glaceon is a pure Ice-type Pokemon. If we take a look at the stats, you will see an overall ranking of 57th in Pokemon Go. That's actually fairly decent. It does have a good attack stat at 238, a defense stat that is also solid, and then finally, its weakest stat is its stamina, ranked out at 250th in Pokemon Go. But this is actually not going to be that bad of an option. If you were thinking that it would take over like a #1 spot, that's unfortunately not going to happen. It will be outclassed by a couple, especially Mamoswine from that double ice type. And then you also have another Pokemon like Weavile as well. I would say that the ice typing is kind of like starting to really ramp up. There's a lot of great ice type attackers, so unfortunately, Glaceon isn't going to necessarily be the best, but it's still going to be a solid option. If we go ahead and take a look at the actual movesets, you will see a fairly interesting moveset because they are all ice type. And regardless of that, you're not necessarily going to get a lot of flexibility. This is one of those options where you may not want to necessarily open up a secondary charge move, but at the same time, if we end up getting that community day and the movesets like Last Resort, or who knows, maybe it could be something else the second time around, maybe you'll get some flexibility out of that. And for those of you curious about the actual typing of a pure ice type, here you go. There are unfortunately quite a bit of weaknesses, so from PvP, I'm not really sure how it's going to fare. So ladies and gentlemen, we saved the best for last, and that is Magnezone. With a max CP of 3,205, Magnezone is a dual type of electric and steel typing. If we go ahead and take a look at the stats, the overall ranking of Magnezone is 43rd in Pokemon Go. The attack stat is absolutely incredible at 238, the defense stat at 205, ranked out at 59th, and then finally, stamina once again is the lowest stat. So we've been seeing a lot of this trend, but Magnezone actually has some very important factors that puts it ahead of some of the other Pokemon that we talked about. So let's go ahead and cover it. We can go ahead and go over the weaknesses and the resistances. This is absolutely insane. If you go ahead and check it out, there are only 3 weaknesses, 1 double weakness to the ground typing, but if you check out the list of resistances, oh my gosh, it ends up actually being 12 resistances in Pokemon Go. Keep that in mind, Pokemon Go is a little bit different from the main series, but that's actually the highest available, which is absolutely insane. So what I'm thinking out of this is it may not necessarily be the best electric type attacker. It's got competition like Raikou, Zapdos, Electivire, but at the same time, this Pokemon seems like it would actually be good at PvP, especially from a typing perspective, which I'm actually excited about. But regardless of that, we definitely need to go ahead and take a look at the moveset. If you take a look at it, you will see Spark, Charge Beam, Zap Cannon, Wild Charge, and then of course Flash Cannon. So really in this case, what I'm thinking is probably Spark on the quick move, and then Wild Charge and Flash Cannon, so you get a little bit of flexibility on the charge moves. I personally don't recommend people having a charge move of the exact same type. I don't necessarily think that that makes a lot of sense to do. Wild Charge is easily the best electric type move, so you definitely want to designate that as your electric type move, and then focus on some type of coverage or some type of different type of move. That way you can use it in multiple ways. But anyways, I hope you did enjoy this episode. I'm definitely excited to see all of these Pokemon added in. Of course, when we are talking about them being added into a Community Day, we don't necessarily know what the Community Day moveset will be, so who knows? Maybe once they get released, we'll actually see a little bit more flexibility and so much more usability. Hopefully you did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and I will see you next time. I wanted to extend a huge thank you to the supporters over at Patreon. You definitely make this possible, and I 100% appreciate this support. If you are interested in supporting my channel on Patreon, definitely feel free to check out the link in the description.